I never thought I'd end up here, honestly. My name's Mike, and I've always thought I knew my life pretty well. Married to Lisa for almost 10 years, had 2 kids, a decent job, the usual stuff. We weren't perfect, but I believed we had something real. Then came the cancer. I got diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer about a year ago. That was a nightmare I wouldn't wish on anyone. The surgeries, the chemo, the fear, it consumed me. Lisa was supposed to be there. She was supposed to be my rock. But even then, I started noticing little things that didn't add up. She was suddenly distant, snapping at me over the smallest things, canceling plans last minute, and texting more than usual with her phone hidden under her pillow. I brushed it off at first, telling myself she was stressed out or worried about me. But deep down, I felt a gnawing suspicion. You know that gut feeling, that voice that says something's wrong even when you don't want to believe it. One day, I was feeling particularly weak after a round of chemo, so I was lying on the couch when Lisa was rushing around the house, trying to hide her phone whenever she thought I wasn't looking. She was acting more defensive than usual. I remember catching her quickly deleting a message, her face flushing. I didn't say anything then, I was too exhausted. But that night, I decided to dig a little deeper. I started paying more attention. I noticed her answers to my questions about her whereabouts becoming vague, her excuses thin. And then I saw it, the small, almost unnoticeable slip-up that shattered my world. It was a hotel receipt, tucked in her purse, with the name of a place I'd never heard of before. The date, during the exact time she claimed she was home taking care of the kids. The name on the receipt was for a hotel in town. I remember the cold rush of shock hitting me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't believe it. My wife, my best friend's supposed partner in crime, was lying right to my face. I couldn't sleep that night, my mind racing. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. How could she do this while I was fighting for my life? I wanted to scream, to shake her, to demand answers. But mostly I just sat there stunned, trying to process the truth I just uncovered. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a train. My head was pounding and every part of my body ached from the chemo treatments. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that I knew. The truth was sitting there in my hands and I couldn't unsee it. I knew I had to confront her. I didn't want to believe it, but every instinct told me I had no choice. I needed answers, so I decided to do something I never thought I would. I was going to confront Lisa. I waited until she was in the kitchen, pretending to be all casual. She was making coffee, her back turned, but I saw her tense up when I walked in. She knew I found out. I didn't bother beating around the bush. I just pulled out the receipt and laid it on the table. Her face went pale, and for a second she looked like she was about to say something. But then she clenched her jaw and looked me right in the eye. "Oh," she said, voice dripping with fake innocence, "you found it, huh? Well, I wasn't planning on hiding it forever." I was stunned, not just by her words, but by the way she was acting, so nonchalant, so bitchy. Like she didn't care that I was hurt, betrayed, or even dying. Instead, she just shrugged and kept pouring her coffee as if it was no big deal. I asked her outright, "Who the hell is he, Lisa? How long has this been going on? Were you planning to tell me? Or did you just think I wouldn't find out?" She rolled her eyes and leaned against the counter, smirking. "Oh, come on, Mike, you're sick. You think I'm supposed to sit here and babysit your feelings while I go out and have a life? He's just someone from work, it's not a big deal. Sex, Mike, it's not like I cheated on you with some stranger. Besides, I was stressed. You're barely here anyway." Her words cut deep. I felt a mixture of anger and sadness swirling inside me. How could she be so cold, so dismissive of everything we'd built? And her excuse, "It's not a big deal." That's when I realized she didn't see me as her husband anymore. She saw me as some sick, dying obstacle she could ignore. But I wasn't about to let her get away with that. I told her I was done, that I needed some space. I told her I didn't want to see her or speak to her until I'd had time to think. But honestly, I knew I wouldn't be able to just walk away from this, not without some kind of payback. How dare she treat my illness and my love like that? How dare she lie and cheat behind my back while I was fighting for my life? That's when the anger really started bubbling up. I swore I'd make her regret this somehow. I just didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew I'd have to do something, something that'd make her see what she lost. The days that followed were like a blur. I spent most of my time in bed, feeling exhausted and numb, but my mind was anything but. I kept replaying everything she said, everything she did. That little act of hers, so dismissive, so arrogant, lit a fire inside me that I couldn't ignore. I knew I had to plan something that would make her pay for the hurt she'd caused. I started by doing what I do best, paying close attention. I installed a few discrete apps on my phone and monitored her phone activity. It wasn't long before I started noticing the pattern. She was still texting him, my so-called coworker. The one she claimed was just a friend. But the texts weren't friendly. They were flirty, sometimes explicit. I saw messages about how she liked being wanted, how he made her feel alive again. It was a punch in the gut. I'd been weak, sick, vulnerable, and she was out there, lying, cheating, and getting her kicks off some guy while I was lying there fighting for every breath. It only fueled my resolve. I had to do something. I couldn't just sit here and let her continue this charade, acting like she was the victim. She was the one who betrayed me, and I needed to make her see that I wasn't going to let her get away with it. One evening, I found out she was planning to meet him again, this time at a bar downtown. I knew I couldn't confront her directly, not yet. Instead, I decided to turn this into my advantage. I contacted a friend of mine, someone I trusted, and asked him to follow her. I told him to keep close, to record everything. I wanted proof. I needed to see how far she was willing to go, how deep this thing really was. While she was out that night, I sat at home, nervously biting my nails. My heart was pounding. Every minute felt like an eternity. Then I got the call. She was seen going into the bar with him, kissing in the parking lot, holding hands like they were teenagers. The recordings were crystal clear. I watched her betray me in real time, and I felt like my world was crumbling around me. What hurt the most, more than the affair itself, was how she lied so easily, how she made me believe I was still the man she loved. And now I knew her true colors. She was a bitch, a liar, a cheat. And I was furious. Furious at her, furious at myself for ever trusting her. But mostly, I was furious because I realized I needed to take control of this mess. I could just sit back and let her walk all over me, not anymore. I decided I'd fight back in whatever way I could. That night was the turning point. Watching her kiss him, hearing their voices through the recordings, I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak that I'd never experienced before. I was sick, weak, but somehow that pain fueled this new determination. I knew I had to do something, and I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I started planning my move carefully because I knew once I acted, everything would change, either for good or for worse. First, I had to think about how to confront her. I didn't want to explode without a plan. I decided I'd wait until she was back home, catch her off guard, and then lay everything bare. I'd show her the recordings, the receipts, everything. I wanted her to see how much I knew, how much I'd uncovered. I also wanted her to understand that I was done being the fool. If she thought she could cheat on me and get away with it, she was dead wrong. Meanwhile, I reached out to my lawyer just to get advice on how to handle this legally, just in case I needed to protect myself or the kids. I wasn't thinking about divorce yet, but I knew this wasn't going to blow over anytime soon. I also contacted a private investigator friend of mine who promised he'd help gather more evidence if needed. I felt a strange sense of calm in all this chaos, like I was finally taking control of a situation I never wanted to be in. When she finally came home that night, she was in her typical bitchy mood, trying to act like nothing had happened, like I was overreacting. I kept quiet at first, but I could see the nervousness behind her eyes, the way she kept glancing at her phone. I didn't say a word, just sat there as she started her usual bullshit, trying to lie her way out of it. Then I pulled out the phone with all the recordings. I pressed play, letting her hear her own voice, her own lies. Her face went pale. She tried to deny, to spin some ridiculous story about how it was just sex, or how everyone does it, like that somehow justified her betrayal. I didn't buy it. I told her I had enough evidence to destroy her, that I had everything on tape, receipts, everything. The look in her eyes was priceless: shock, then anger, then outright defiance. She yelled, called me paranoid, accused me of invading her privacy, and said I was overreacting because I was so sick and helpless. But I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I told her I was done. I told her she was a bitch for cheating behind my back while I was dying, while I was trying to hold on to what little life I had left. I told her she'd regret ever crossing me, and I meant every word. The power shift was real that night. I finally felt like I was in control, even if I was still weak physically. The worst part, she just kept lying, trying to deny everything. But I knew her game. She was a liar, a cheat, and she thought she could get away with it. Not anymore. I had enough. I was already planning the next steps, whether to fight, to divorce, or to expose her to everyone she cared about. All I knew was this was just the beginning of my revenge. The days that followed were a whirlwind. After confronting Lisa with all the evidence, the house felt colder, more tense. She was still acting bitchy, throwing fits, trying to gaslight me, but I wasn't going to fall for it anymore. I had proof now, and I was determined to make her own her lies. I spent hours talking to my lawyer, weighing my options. I knew I couldn't just walk away without consequences. She was trying to manipulate her way out, as usual. But I also knew I had to do something that would hit her where it hurt. I started gathering more evidence. I had the recordings, but I wanted to make sure I had everything: texts, emails, even her bank statements to show her spending money on this guy. I hired the private investigator to dig up more dirt, to confirm she was meeting him frequently, sometimes even more than I suspected. I stayed mostly quiet around the kids, not wanting to scare them or let them see how broken I felt inside. But inside, I was boiling with rage, heartbreak, and disgust. One evening, she snapped, trying to keep her composure, but I saw the cracks. Bitchy facade. She accused me of making things up, of being paranoid, and kept insisting that I was just jealous or that I was losing it. I looked her in the eyes and told her I knew everything, how she'd been sneaking around, lying, cheating. I told her she was a piece of shit for doing this to me, especially while I was battling cancer. Her face twisted in anger and she spat back. "You're just sick, Mike. You're dying and you're making this all about you. I still love you, but I have needs too." That hit me like a punch. She said she still loved me. Or was that just more lies? I didn't buy it. I told her she was a bitch and that her needs didn't matter anymore, that she'd pushed me to the edge and I'd had enough. I wasn't planning to just forgive and forget. No, I was going to make her regret her actions somehow. I didn't know exactly what form that revenge would take yet, but I knew I had to do something that would shake her to her core. I started working on a plan that involved confronting her own family, showing them the truth. I wanted her to see that her lies and cheating wouldn't stay hidden forever. I also decided to leak some of the evidence online, confidentially, of course, just enough to make her realize her life was about to blow up. I wasn't going to let her get away with this quietly. I wanted the world to see her for what she really was, someone who cheated, lied, and treated love like a game. I knew I was risking everything: my marriage, my reputation, maybe even the custody of the kids. But at that point, I didn't care. She had pushed me to the brink, and I was ready to fight back with everything I had. Because if she thought she could cheat on a dying man and get away with it, she was dead wrong. I'd make her see what it means to betray someone who's already fighting for his life. And whether it was through legal action or just exposing her, I was going to make her regret the day she ever crossed me. In the end, everything I planned unfolded exactly as I expected. I didn't want to just walk away quietly from what she did. No, I wanted her to see the full extent of her betrayal. I leaked the evidence to a few trusted friends and even contacted some journalists I knew, just to let the world know who she really was. Her family got wind of it too: her mother, her sister, everyone who thought she was a decent person. The fallout was instant and brutal. She lost her job, her reputation, and her friends. The woman who once acted so bitchy and entitled suddenly found herself alone, with nowhere to hide. The divorce was messy but necessary. I fought for everything: custody of the kids, the house, her assets, and I won most of it. Not because I wanted revenge just for revenge's sake, but because I needed her to face the consequences of what she'd done. Watching her try to spin her lies, seeing her desperation, it finally hit me that I'd done what I needed to do. I might have been weak and sick, but I was still standing, stronger for having fought back. The truth is, I've never felt so free. The betrayal tore my world apart, but it also forced me to look inside myself and realize I was stronger than I thought. I learned that even when you're at your lowest, you can still fight back, even if that fight is ugly, messy, and painful. I've come to accept that some things are better left behind, things that no longer serve you, that only drag you down. And I've learned that revenge, when done right, isn't about hurting someone just to hurt them. It's about reclaiming your power, exposing the lies, and finally finding peace. Now I focus on healing, physically, emotionally, and mentally. The cancer still lingers in the background, but I don't let it define me anymore. I've realized that life is too short to waste on people who don't value you. My wife's betrayal was probably the hardest thing I've ever gone through, but it taught me something I could never learn otherwise. I am capable of standing tall, even when everything around me is falling apart. And for anyone else out there facing something similar, I'll say this: trust your gut, fight for yourself, and never let anyone take away your dignity. Because at the end of the day, that's all you really have.